Hey everybody, in this video we are going to be covering Module 2 of the review in the packet. In the previous video we covered the Module 1 questions, so if you need to go back and watch that, find the separate link for that in the announcements. This video we're going to cover Module 2, which is all about solving equations. So on the midterm exam you're going to have various questions that give you whether it be an easy, simple, medium difficulty, or challenging type of equation. It'll give you a good mix of different types of equations, and in each of them, you're just aiming to solve for x. So we'll start here with number 9. In number 9, we just have x plus 29 equals 75. So this one's pretty straightforward. We don't have to do a lot of steps for this one because we notice that there's just a plus 29 around the x. So we just need to subtract 29 from both sides. And if it helps, put the line down the equal sign. So when we subtract 29 on both sides, we can cancel that term right there, which leaves us with x equals 75 minus 29. So this should end up with an answer of 46. And to check your answer, you can always take your value, plug it back in the original equation, and see if it balances out on both sides. So we check 46 plus 29 does equal 75. The next question, we see we have parentheses, and during class we talked about sometimes we need to distribute here or multiply into the parentheses. So when we do that, 4 times x is 4x, 4 times negative 6 is a negative 24, or we just put minus 24. And we didn't do anything to 8 yet. Now we see that we have this 4 being multiplied by x, but we also have this minus 24 as well. So we usually address whatever's being added or subtracted first. So in this case, we're going to add 24 to both sides since there's a minus 24. And now we're left with 4x is equal, and we do 8 plus 24, so we got 32. Last step, whenever we have a value multiplied by x, we're going to divide by that value on both sides. So you should end up with x equals 8. Number 11, we don't need to distribute. We can just directly begin by subtracting 24. So 4x equals, subtract 52 minus 24. So that ends up giving us 28. And then we divide both sides by 4. X equals x equals 7. In the next problem, number 12, we've got two sides with parentheses. So we're going to multiply through to both sides. When we multiply through, we get 5x minus 20, and then 3 times x plus 18. Now, in this case, we have variables on both sides, and whenever this happens, we need to take one and move it to the other side to combine the x variables together. Just like we would, address this minus 20, we can even take care of that here at the beginning, plus 20, plus 20. We could do that first, right? And if we did that, we would end up with 5x here. We'd have this term cancel. And then on the right side, we'd have 3x plus 38. subtract now this 3x from both sides. So notice how we have 5x here and 3x here. We want this 3x to move towards this 5x, but if it's on different sides of the equation, we need to add or subtract that entire term. So in this case, we're going to subtract it from both sides. All right, so 5x minus 3x is 2x equals 38. And we divide both sides by 2. So we get x equals 17. Let's take a look at the next one. Number 13, this one gives us a conversion equation where it says f equals 1.8c plus 32. Here's an equation, and then it says convert 24 degrees to Celsius. So if it's a situation like this, you can take 24 or whatever the Fahrenheit is and replace it on the Fahrenheit variable, and then you solve for the other variable here. So rewriting this, I'm going to write, instead of f equals all of this, I'm going to replace the f with the 24. So we have 24 equals 1.8 c plus 32. So now from here, we need to convert to Celsius, meaning we need to solve for c. So we can just apply our normal rules, minus 32 minus 32. So 24 minus 32 is negative 8 equals 1.8c. And then we divide both sides by 1.8. And when we do that, in this case, the 1.8's over here cancel, but we do have this negative 8 divided by 1.8. So we would need to convert in our calculator or just divide in our calculator 8 over 1.8, 8 divided by 1.8. And I forgot to put a negative, but this should end up being a negative 4.44 repeating. Negative 4.44 equals C. There you go. Let's take a look at number 14. So at number 14, during class, we had an example similar to this one, where we had a fraction here, but a whole number there. We can use this strategy where we turn this whole number into fraction, 5 over 1. Any whole number divided by 1 is going to be the whole number again. And we also learned about cross multiplication. But in this case, make sure you use those parentheses. The 1 is going to get multiplied there, and the 5 is going to get multiplied with the x minus 3. So this is going to look like 1 times 4x plus 2 equals, and then we have this x minus 3 gets multiplied by the 5. The parentheses I added there because we need to distribute when we multiply to both of these terms, right, for each of these. So the 1, I really just wrote it there so you know that it's getting multiplied by all of this, but really it's going to remain the same when we multiply everything by 1. And then over here, when you distribute, we get 5x minus 15. And then we take it a few more steps after that, right? We can subtract 2's from both sides, which leaves us with 4x, those cancel, equals 5x minus 17. We combine these two to get a negative 17. And this 5x, we want to move it to this other side. We get negative 1x equals these canceled, negative 17. And we're almost there. This negative 1 right here, we just need to divide both sides by negative 1. So when we divide both sides by negative 1, this becomes x equals, and over here, when you divide two negatives, you end up getting a positive value, 17 over 1, or just 17. We also talked in lecture about a similar question, number 15, where if you just have two fractions equivalent to each other, you can use the cross multiplication method. So when you do this, we'll end up having 32 times negative 4, and we can use our calculator to verify that. 4 times 32, it's 128. Since the negative was on the 4, it's going to be a negative 128. So negative 128 equals, and then when I do x times 4, I get 24x there. And now we just have a simple divide by 24. Divide by 24 on both sides. The 24s cancel. Then we have 128 divided by 24. We have 5.33 as our answer here. 5.33 equals x. Now, depending on the question, you may not see a decimal. You may see a mixed number, like 5 and 1/3 instead, right? 0.33 is the same thing as 1/3. And if you're not sure and you see this as an answer choice, well, you can just do 1/3 in your calculator, right? And you see that 0.33, and you know there's already a 5 in front, so it's 5 1/3. You might see it as a improper fraction, right? Which would be 16 over 3. And in that case, you can just divide these two, 16 divided by 3, and there's your 5.33. So you can always compare any type of answer choice to a decimal. So you might see this, you might see this. It really just depends on the question and the answer choices. Here's number 16. We're going to distribute this negative 3 to get negative 3x minus 12 equals 2, right? So again, negative 3 times x, negative 3x, negative 3 times positive 4 is a negative 12. Negative times a positive, that's why this is a minus right there. And we take care of all of the things around the x variable. Negative 3x, this can cancel, equals 14 divided by negative 3 divided by negative 3. So we get x equals, and over here, I'm going to leave this as a fraction. You can divide it in your calculator if you need to, depending on your answer choices. So just know on your exam, your answer choices might be decimals, they might be fractions. That will dictate what you do with this fraction right here to figure out which of the answer choices is going to be the correct one. Here's an equation with a lot of steps in it, but you already know how to do most of these steps, right? We have distribution. So just take it one term at a time, 3x minus 12, so there's the first two, right? Plus 4x plus 28. So don't just think that because this is a plus that all of them are pluses. Sometimes this is the negative, so just be careful. In this case, it was just a positive, so we just use 4 times 7, there's a plus 28. Sometimes it's a negative though. 2x, right? So in this case, positive 2, but we have a negative 3, so it's going to be a minus 6 in between here. And this minus 5x at the end, we didn't do anything with it, so we just bring it down. Right, so now we got two sides. So we have a lot of different terms. We could probably combine some things. So sometimes you'll have to combine like terms, right? So like 3x and 4x, there's a plus in front of the 4x, so that's going to turn into a 7x. And then this negative 12 plus 28, or 28 minus 12, that's going to turn into, when you combine them, it's going to turn into a 16. And on the other side, you got 2x minus 5x. That's going to be a negative 3x. And we don't do anything with that negative 6. It didn't combine with anything yet. So we always combine on separate sides. We never combine across the line unless we negate or we invert whatever we're trying to combine, right? So we don't do 16 minus 6, right? We cancel this 16 here first, and then we make sure that we do negative 6 minus 16 there. 7x equals negative 3x minus 22. And add this 3x there. So again, we don't combine across lines unless we negate it over here, unless we invert that term on one side. So we end up here with 10x equals negative 22. And now we're going to divide both sides by 10. So we end up with x equals, in this case, let's just say that you don't see this, your answers are fractions, and you don't see this fraction in there. That means we need to figure out, what does negative 22 over 10 simplify to? You could see a negative 11 over 5 there, because I just divided both values by 2, for example, right? And then we end up with this reduced or simplified fraction. There you go. If you saw a decimal, you can divide the fraction and get a decimal as well. Here's 18, just another practice problem just like the previous one, right? We can multiply there. And in this case, this negative 4 gets multiplied into here. So I circled it because of that negative sign. Sometimes people forget to take that negative with the 4. We get negative 9x minus 15, negative 6x minus 4x minus 12. So that negative 4 went with the 4, multiplied by the 3 becomes a negative 12. Right, and then we can do the similar process here, and we can combine a little bit. Negative 10x minus 12. Nothing combined over here, so we can leave this alone. Plus 15 plus 15. Negative 9x equals negative 10x. 15 minus 12, that's going to be a positive 3, or negative 12 plus 15. We can then add 10x, right? We want to invert this so it goes away there, but then we need to also add 10x here, so we get negative 9x plus 10x, that's 1x, or we can just write it as, I'm going to read it as 1x actually, equals 3, or 1x is also just the same thing as 3, x equals 3. Okay, here's a one with the fraction. Right, let's cross multiply here. You can cross multiply the 5 there and the 1 up there, put some parentheses, right? So we get 1 times 3x minus 7 equals, and then we do 5 times the negative 2, or negative 10. So this is 3x minus 7 when you multiply this 1 through. Nothing really happens in there. Equals negative 10. So I'm going to add 7 to both sides. We can get rid of those. 3x equals negative 3 there. Divide by negative 3 on both sides, so x equals negative 1. All right, let's keep going here. So for all these that have like a fraction and then not a fraction, you can always turn the other thing that's not a fraction into a fraction, and then you just cross multiply, right? So we do 1 times 3, which is 3. And then on the other side, we have 8 times x minus 6. So this will become 3 equals 8x minus 48. And then we can follow our steps from there. Add 48 to both sides. So 51 equals 8x. This went away. And then we divide both sides by 8. And so this is a situation where, you might have different things happening in your answer choices. The review is all open-ended, but on your exam you will have answer choices to choose from, so you can kind of do different things with that 51/8 as you need to, depending on the answer choices. Okay, let's keep going. 21. Here's another simpler one step. Add 12 to both sides. Right, so we get 17 equals x, and that canceled right there. One step, there you go. 22. If a medication bottle contains 180 milliliters, how many would be contained in 9 bottles? So you can go about this in different ways, but really we just see 180 is in one bottle. 180, let me put milliliters equals one bottle, and it's asking about 9 bottles. We can put an X, how many milliliters would that be? So we can set this up in a couple of ways. We can turn this first equation actually into a fraction. 180 over 1 equals, and then we turn this other fraction into x over 9. And now we do a cross multiplication situation, right? 180 times 9 and then 1 times x. So this is going to end up being something equals 1x, or just x, right? So 180 times 9, we can punch that into our calculator. It's a larger calculation, so just be safe. 180 times 9 is 1620. And then the last one right here, it says the sum of two consecutive numbers, even numbers, a plus b is equal to 94. If b equals a plus 2, what is a? So this one is a situation where we need to take one equation and input it into the other equation. So this tells us that b is a plus 2. b equals a plus 2. So let's take a plus 2 and replace it with b right there. A plus b equals 94. And in the next step, we're going to say a plus, and instead of saying b here, we're going to say a plus 2, right? Because we're taking this b and switching it out with this entire thing right here. And then we still have equals 94, sorry. So that's going to be 2a plus 2 equals 94. So what I just did right there was I just combined these two. I put parentheses there because I'm just showing you that all of this replaced what was originally before there with the b. But we don't really need to multiply anything because there's no other number up here. So I can just think of it as a plus 2. Well, a plus a is 2a if I combine like terms. And now we're just solving like we normally would. We would subtract 2, so we would get that 2a equals 92. We would divide both sides by 2. And that leaves us with a equals Let's see, what's that? So 90 divided by 2 is 45, so one more 46. So A equals 46. Now thinking about back to the question, it says, what is A? Well, there we did. We just figured it out. Sometimes you have to also figure out B, but in this case, we just needed to figure out what A was. All right, so that looks like the entire equation module 2 section here. So feel free to go back and rewatch any of that if you need to and practice those. If you have questions about any of these problems, let me know, send me an email, and I'm happy to help you further and explain anything that you may need help with. In the next video, I'll be covering the module 3 questions, so be sure to watch that one as well.